Well, winter's nearly done here in East Idaho, so how did the Gem State's wildlife fare over these colder months? Here to tell us for today's wildlife is Jennifer Jackson from the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. Well, thank you very much for stopping by this morning. First off, let's start. How'd they do this winter? What are we looking like right now, just before spring?
Well, typically this time of year is actually one of the worst times of year for wintering animals like mule deer and elk, because they've had this fuel tank that they've had to manage throughout the winter, and then come springtime, if they don't have enough fuel left over, they can tip over. So this is actually usually the tenuous part of the year.
Okay.
Except this year. It's been such an odd winter. It's been very mild. Not to say there hasn't been great snow depths in other parts of the region, but it's just not been consistent.
Not that constant cold or constant snow.
Exactly, over the whole length of the winter. So our mule deer and elk have done really well this year. And you have a few, issues with animals coming down into haystacks here and there, which happens every year because that's ice cream for them. But in general, we've done really well. Our animals are in great condition. We've been meeting with our winter feeding advisory committee routinely, but there's not really been any issues to speak of.
Okay.
And so normally this would make the fish managers a little worried, because that means maybe we don't have enough snowpack for the summer for fish. But now we've got a good snowpack, and and we've got some great water levels that way. So it's been kind of a win-win for everybody so far.
Weird. So with summertime now, going into summer, how does this kind of affect the animals going into summertime now, and what do they do?
I guess wildlife managers are really never happy, because it's not just about having a great, the right amount of weather in the winter time, but also making sure they have, we want to hope for a good summer weather as well. Droughts are problematic for the range, which is problematic for the animals as well. Yeah, you want to have
it's not like winter where they store up. They don't store up in the spring going into summer.
No, they use up during the winter. Now summertime is when they have to build it back on to get ready for winter again. And so we would hope that we would have good conditions in our habitats and the higher elevations to help those animals build up fuel for the fall.
Okay, so speaking of fall, going into probably the most important season for, I know, a lot of my friends, hunting season. What is this, preliminarily? What does this good winter or light winter mean going into next fall's hunting season?
Well, winter is typically always hardest on the fawns, and so this year our fawns had a good winter, and so maybe you won't notice that so much this fall, but you'll notice that the following fall.
So this is kind of going to pay dividends later on down the road.
Correct, but we've also had some not too shabby experiences in the last couple of years with our fawns. It depends on the region of the state. Some areas were worse than others. So last fall we had folks saying they saw a lot of deer out in the field. We had really good harvest success rates, and people seeing lots of bucks, and so that's going to carry over this year as well, because our winter was so good on the deer in general, the adults included. So I think it bodes well for the fall.
With a minimal winter kill like this, is there any concerns this brings up going forward for you guys as managers?
Not at all. I think this is great to have had this experience. It was a little nerve-wracking, worried about what this would mean for snowpack levels and what that would mean for habitats in the summer, and then also rivers and reservoirs, and that's where some concern was happening. But for the big game species, it was good for them this year. And I know it's not over yet, but their body condition is so good that even with some additional snowstorms in February, maybe March, the outlook is so positive for our big game this year.
All right. Well, thank you very much for stopping by this morning.